This is the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coupe.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
So, Tom, we got a blast from the past the other day when there was an announcement from Lewis Borders that I guess we're going to have the second coming of Webvan. And I can't exactly quote what I said to myself out loud when I saw that headline because it's a little vulgar. But what the hell? Really? It's hard to imagine that anybody associated with Webvan and what was it, $800 million in losses before they finally went under would have a lot of credibility in the market. But you know a lot more about this than I do.
Well, it's funny when I saw the press release, it's like, wait a minute, I've heard of this company before. Has he been doing this for a while? So I went in and looked in PitchBook, which is a service we use that tracks, venture capital and funding and stages of companies and all that. And the company was founded in like 2012 or thereabouts. Got its initial funding in 13, raised another round in 2015. So this is not a new endeavor. Lewis and his team have been at this, at least to some level, for the better part of 7 years.
And so that was roughly, and Webvan went out in 2001, right?
Yeah, it was quite the layoff between there.
So is this a matter of when something like this comes out, and we can go into more depth about it?
Yep.
There's, when you read the press release, I'll just read the opening line. The opening paragraph. Home delivery service. Put on Morning Newsbeat the other day, sort of a prosaic name at best. Today unveiled a new model for at-home delivery of fresh groceries and general merchandise, setting the standard for next-generation e-commerce by combining industry-defining automation, AI-powered software, eco-friendly delivery totes, along with free home delivery. HDS provides an unrivaled end-to-end experience, fixing all that's broken in e-commerce today. My first reaction to that is, well, he's not really doing anything because he's out there looking for $25 million just to get started. Is this simply a matter of sort of looking around? There's a pandemic. There's stresses on e-commerce, certainly on e-grocery right now. Oh, this is a good time to tell people, yeah, you should invest in the sector?
Well, again, after having been at it for 7 years, the last significant capital into the company some number of years ago, it does seem a little of an opportunistic time to be doing this. But that said, we've seen e-commerce as a percentage of overall retail. There's a graphic going around social media channels and whatnot that over the last 2 months, e-commerce has gone from 16% of retail to 27% of retail in 2 months. So e-commerce has almost, doubled. So there's a lot of reason to want to do it now. There's a lot of reason, you have a captive market that's certainly interested in it now. You also have, with all the shift of purchasing online, you've had these e-commerce models getting really stressed. And we've talked about that in this innovation conversation you have on your podcast as well. That the experience, because the volume has kind of outstripped the system's ability to serve it. You've got a lot of consumer demand and a lot of suboptimal experiences. So from a market readiness standpoint, it's probably a pretty good time to put out such a statement. But, the competition's never been fiercer than it is today from, the big guys, from, the established, grocery retailers, going to micro fulfillment, a lot of investment and innovation into models today. I would say that if they had aspirations to keep the business going and they had not done this now, there would be a train leaving the station that they would miss. So it definitely is the time. If you're going to do it, now's the time to announce something big and get after it.
But it seems to me that one of the things that, based on, and you've read probably more about it even than I have, is that what I'm having trouble identifying, other than the fact that they think they can make it work better because they got robots, which they didn't have with Webvan. Other than that, it's hard for me to figure out where is the differentiation, where is the compelling consumer value proposition that would differentiate this from Amazon, Walmart, Kroger, Ocado. Pick your pick, or or even Instacart for that matter.
Yeah.
Where is the value proposition that differentiates them? And since they need 25 million to get started, and I think the materials basically say it's going to take them 4 or 5 years to really get ramped up, well, you know, they may be trying to catch a train that's leaving the station, but
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, if you to look at out 4 or 5 years, you're probably talking about 25% plus of grocery e-commerce or grocery revenue being done via e-commerce. So, I mean, there'll be a big market for them to go after, but it will be a pretty well penetrated market by the companies we've just named. And I didn't see anything in the press release that stood out as there's true differentiation here. But that's not to say there isn't. It's just the words that were used in the press release. You could have swapped out, Kroger's Ocado initiative and used the same press release almost. Obviously a little bit different assets and company behind it, but what it's going to be offering, or what any company offering in e-commerce space is offering those things.
well, and in the case of Kroger, they've actually got buildings. They've got actual robots. I mean, they've got 4 or 5 places that they've already started to construct. Right. I mean, and they've got a target date because they've got to construct a certain number by a certain point to keep the exclusivity with Ocado. I mean, it seems to me that one of the things so they've got real assets, right? And real motivation to get ramped up by a certain point. I mean, 5 years from now, in addition to being, 25% of total grocery revenue, I got to believe we would see a vastly different sort of foundational infrastructure in terms of e-grocery that'll be light years ahead of where we are now.
This wouldn't be an innovation conversation if we didn't mention Amazon. Although it's the first we mentioned Amazon, however many minutes in we are, which is pretty good. But think about where the space could be in 4 or 5 years when HDS, comes out of, I'm not going to call it stealth because they're certainly not stealthy. But when they emerge, you could have, an Amazon that has hundreds, thousands of stores, right? Between Go formats, Go grocery, their new broader formats, Whole Foods, what they're doing with Prime Now. I mean, think about what Amazon alone could look like in 5 years. And then you think about what all the other big players are doing to innovate in their models and where they're going to be in 5 years. And then think about where the regionals are going to be in 5 years. And I mean, it is going to be a market that I imagine will have a lot of really impressive capabilities and lots of years of iterating to get the service right underneath it. So to declare you're building a new model now, bring investment into that model and feel a level of confidence you're going to be able to serve, a meaningful share of the market in 5 years. It's pretty bold ambition. And it's going to take a lot of capital. And, we'll see if these initial investors, what their long-term horizon is. It looks like the current round that they raised is convertible debt. So, that's, it'll ultimately turn to equity at some point. They'll need a lot more equity investors. So I don't know, it'd be interesting. It'd be fun to watch.
Listen, I just hope 4 or 5 years from now, we've been allowed to leave our houses.
Oh, gosh.
Well, and I want to go back to Amazon for a second because you made me think about something. I'm curious. So there's been a lot of attention paid to the idea that they're starting to convert certain stores, like certain Whole Food stores, to dark stores.
Yeah.
Is that in your mind? Is that kind of a momentary initiative just to kind of handle what's going on now, or do you think that is a strategic move that we will see more of from Amazon?
Well, I think the notion of a traditional dark store, I don't think that's a lasting change. I have no idea, what Amazon's doing, but I think that the idea of dark inventory service nodes,
micro-fulfillment centers?
Be it micro-fulfillment, be it a combination of automation and manual pick with multiple temperature zones, I think that is absolutely going to be a part of everyone's model. Now, whether that exists in a micro-fulfillment center, in your store, attached to your store, near your store, I think various players' models will evolve differently. So I think, but I do think some of the moves you're seeing Amazon make toward that now, is to handle volume, and it is a more effective way to serve their customers.
And I would imagine at some level close the gap between it and companies like Walmart that have that have thousands and thousands of stores.
Absolutely.
This week it would be I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Walmart's first quarter e-commerce sales going up 75%. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I would expect that. We watch what's happening at Amazon and, public company and whatnot. Not that we have any proprietary information, because we certainly don't, but we watch our clients' activity on Amazon. It's up a lot more than 75%. During that time frame. Now it depends when they cut off their quarter, when they measure it, and all that. But very impressive growth. I think they're doing a bang up job, and I think the sky's the limit. I think you're going to see a lot more growth coming out of that company in this area.
Yeah, and to just to wrap up, to circle back around just to Webvan for a second. I think one of the things that our morning newsfeed readers, our viewers, need to think about in terms of this context is the fact that that innovation does continue to move forward, and it seems to me whether you're Kroger or Albertsons or you're a 3-store independent in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be thinking about this stuff, and you've got to be figuring out ways to innovate around the customer experience and what customers need, and not be saying, oh, we just had a couple of good quarters because of the pandemic. Right. I mean, to use your train metaphor, the train continues to move forward.
It does. It just sped up dramatically over the last couple months, right? So we've talked about this innovation conversation too. The need to innovate has always been there. The need to learn through that innovation and iteration has always been there. We've collapsed a couple of years of volume and learning and urgency into a couple months. And so I think the companies that are learning through this are willing to continue to innovate forward through this, while dealing with myriad of challenges that they face in running stores and connecting with consumers in this environment. I mean, that's no small task, and in its own is just a Herculean, effort. But those that are able to innovate and learn through here are going to continue to get stronger. And I think if you just look at where the industry is going to be coming out of 2020 versus where it was going into 2020, I think it's going to be pretty mind blowing with what you see across the board, from big, medium, and small players. The innovation that they're delivering to customers. It's going to be bumpy and bloody along the way, but there's real progress happening here. So you can't sit back. You need to have the longer horizons for sure, but you also just need to be innovating like crazy through this time.
Well, the good news is it gives us something to talk about every other week. So
yes.
That is it for this edition of the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coupe.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
We'll see you next time, everybody.